Did you know a noble woman born into privilege once walked away from comfort after discovering Christ hidden in Italy's poor? Rejected from the cloister, she faced heartbreak, war, and abandonment, yet God transformed her sorrow into a mission of charity. For the abandoned, her sorrow became mercy, her prayer became service. This is the story of Saint Magdalene of Canossa. Chapter 1. The world she was born into and her childhood. At the end of the 18th century, northern Italy stood on unstable ground, shaken by the echoes of the French Revolution and the advancing armies of Napoleon. Old structures were crumbling, and uncertainty spread through cities and countryside alike. Fear, change, and unrest shaped daily life. In such a world, faith was often tested, and many people struggled to understand where God was leading them. In the city of Verona, these upheavals were deeply felt. Society became increasingly divided between the wealthy and the growing number of poor. Streets that once reflected stability now revealed hardship, with abandoned children, struggling families, and widespread insecurity. While some lived in comfort behind noble walls, many others endured hunger and neglect. This contrast would quietly prepare the heart of a young girl for a future she could not yet imagine. Magdalene of Canossa was born on the 1st of March, 1774, into a noble and respected family. Her lineage carried honor, history, and privilege, placing her among the aristocracy of Verona. From the outside, her life seemed destined for comfort and influence. Yet God often works in hidden ways. And even within noble homes, he begins shaping souls through circumstances that do not always reflect outward appearances or expectations. When Magdalene was still a child, tragedy entered her life. In 1779, her father died suddenly, leaving the family shaken and uncertain. His absence created a deep void, not only in the household's stability, but also in the young girl's heart. The security she once knew began to fade, replaced by questions and a quiet sorrow that would remain with her in the years to come. The pain deepened when her mother chose to remarry and leave the family. For Magdalene, this was not only a change in circumstance, but a wound of abandonment. The experience left a lasting mark on her soul, shaping her understanding of love, loss, and trust. In that silence, where a child longs for presence and comfort, God was already planting seeds of compassion and inner strength. Raised under the care of relatives, Magdalene learned early what it meant to carry responsibility. Without the warmth of a stable family life, she matured quickly, developing discipline and resilience. She was not sheltered from life's hardships, but formed through them. These early responsibilities helped her grow in wisdom and attentiveness, qualities that would later define her leadership and her ability to care for others. What seemed like a childhood marked by sorrow was, in God's providence, a quiet preparation. The wounds she carried became a source of empathy, allowing her to recognize the suffering of others with a tender heart. Her early experiences taught her that true love is faithful and sacrificial. From these beginnings, a deeper spiritual life began to take root, guiding her toward the mission God had prepared for her. Chapter 2. The Search for Vocation and the Journey of Discernment. From a young age, Magdalene felt a quiet but persistent desire to give her life entirely to God. While others around her were drawn to status, comfort, or marriage, her heart longed for something deeper. She was not satisfied with a life of privilege alone. In silence and prayer, she began to sense that God was calling her, though the path ahead remained unclear and filled with uncertainty. In 1791, she took a decisive step by seeking entrance into the Carmelite convent, a place of silence, prayer, and hidden devotion. Not once, but twice, she attempted to join this contemplative life. Each time, however, the door did not open for her. These refusals were not simply disappointments. They became moments of confusion, where her sincere desire to serve God seemed to meet an unexpected and painful resistance. This experience led Magdalene into a profound spiritual crisis. She questioned herself, her desires, and even her understanding of God's will. How could a longing so sincere be denied? In that struggle, she encountered the mystery of discernment, where God's plans are not always revealed through immediate success. Her soul entered a period of darkness, yet it was a darkness where faith was quietly being purified and deepened. At the same time, practical responsibilities began to shape her daily life. Magdalene assumed the management of her family's large estate, a role that required wisdom, discipline, and maturity. This was not the hidden life she had imagined, but it placed her in direct contact with the realities of the world. Through these duties, she learned to balance responsibility with interior prayer, discovering God's presence in ordinary tasks. Gradually, through perseverance in prayer, a new clarity began to emerge. Magdalene came to understand that her vocation was not meant to unfold within the walls of a cloister. The silence she sought would not be found in separation from the world, but in a heart united with God while living within it. This realization did not come quickly, but through patient listening and trust. As her understanding deepened, she began to see more clearly the suffering around her. The poor, the abandoned, and the forgotten were no longer distant realities, but living invitations. She recognized that God was calling her not away from the world, but into it, to serve those most in need. This insight transformed her earlier disappointments into a new sense of purpose and direction. With courage, Magdalene made a decisive choice. She let go of the path she once believed was hers and embraced a vocation that was less certain but more demanding. It required trust, humility, and a willingness to step into the unknown. By surrendering her own plans, she opened her life to God's greater design, beginning a journey of service that would bear lasting fruit. Chapter 3: Facing Social Reality and Awakening to Mission. The years of war and political upheaval brought deep suffering to the people of northern Italy. As armies passed through cities and countryside, instability followed closely behind. The poor became poorer, and many families lost what little they had. Hunger, fear, and uncertainty marked daily life. In this wounded world, Magdalene could no longer ignore the growing cries of those who were struggling to survive. Walking through the streets of Verona, she encountered realities that stirred her heart profoundly. Children wandered without education or guidance, left to grow up in neglect. Young girls, abandoned or exploited, faced uncertain futures. The sick suffered without care, and the elderly were often forgotten. These were not distant stories, but living faces, each one revealing a silent plea for dignity, love, and compassion. As she reflected on what she saw, Magdalene began to perceive a painful gap between faith and life. Many spoke of God, yet the suffering around them remained unaddressed. Religious devotion existed, but it often did not reach the wounded places of society. This realization troubled her deeply. She sensed that true faith could not remain separate from the needs of the poor, but must become visible through concrete acts of love. A striking moment came when Napoleon himself visited her family's residence. Here stood a figure of immense power and influence, surrounded by honor and attention. Yet beyond the walls of that noble home, poverty and despair persisted. This contrast between authority and suffering left a lasting impression on Magdalene. It revealed how easily human greatness can overlook those who are most in need. These experiences gradually awakened something deeper within her soul. What she witnessed was not simply social injustice, but a call from God. Her conscience could no longer remain at peace with a life that did not respond to such suffering. The faces of the poor became, for her, a place of encounter with Christ. In their need, she began to recognize a divine invitation. With growing clarity, Magdalene understood that love must take form in action. It was not enough to feel compassion or to pray from a distance. The gospel demanded more, a willingness to step into the lives of others and share their burdens. She came to believe that every act of charity, no matter how small, was a response to Christ himself, present in the least and the forgotten. At the center of this awakening was her contemplation of Jesus crucified. In the suffering of Christ, she found both meaning and direction. The cross revealed a love that gives itself completely. Without reserve, Magdalene embraced this mystery as the foundation of her mission. From that moment on, her life would be shaped by a single desire: to make visible the love of Christ to those who needed it most. Chapter 4. The beginning of a mission of charity in the world. With a heart now firmly rooted in compassion, Magdalene began to use her personal wealth not for comfort, but for service. The inheritance she once managed as a responsibility became a gift to be shared. She directed her resources toward the poor, the sick, and the forgotten. In doing so, she transformed material possessions into instruments of love, allowing her faith to take visible and meaningful form. Her charity was not distant or symbolic. Magdalene went personally into the poorest neighborhoods, walking the same streets as those she served. She visited the sick in hospitals and in their homes, offering not only assistance but also presence and dignity. She did not remain behind the safety of noble walls. Instead, she chose to encounter suffering face to face, bringing comfort through simple acts of care. In 1808, a decisive step marked the true beginning of her mission. Magdalene was given an abandoned convent, a place that seemed forgotten and empty. Yet in her eyes, it became a space filled with possibility. What others saw as useless, she recognized as a foundation. There, she began to shape a new way of life, rooted in prayer and active charity, guided by trust in God. Soon, young girls from the poorest areas, especially from the slums of San Zeno, found a home within those walls. Magdalene welcomed them with tenderness, offering not only shelter but also education and formation. She understood that love must build futures, not only relieve present suffering. Through teaching and care, she gave these children a sense of dignity, hope, and a new beginning in life. This path required a radical transformation in her own way of living. Magdalene gradually let go of the privileges of her noble background. She chose simplicity, embracing a life closer to those she served. Her identity was no longer defined by status, but by charity. In this quiet renunciation, she reflected the humility of Christ, who came not to be served, but to serve. Her work did not remain unnoticed. Women who shared her desire to serve God through charity began to gather around her. They were drawn not only by her actions, but by the spirit that animated them. Magdalene did not impose a vision, but invited others to share in it. Together, they discovered a common calling rooted in prayer, service, and trust in divine providence. From these humble beginnings, a small community slowly took shape. It was not yet an established religious congregation, but a living seed of what would come. Their days were marked by prayer, work, and service to the poor. In simplicity and unity, they embodied a new expression of consecrated life, one that brought the love of God directly into the wounded places of the world. Chapter 5. The foundation of the congregation and the expansion of the mission. As the small community grew in unity and purpose, Magdalene formally established the Daughters of Charity, later known as the Canossian Sisters. What began as a simple response to human suffering became a recognized path of consecrated life. This foundation was not built on ambition, but on a deep desire to serve God through love. The congregation took shape as a living expression of the gospel in action. At the heart of this new community was a profound spiritual vision. Magdalene invited her sisters to contemplate Jesus Christ crucified, seeing in the cross the fullest revelation of divine love. This contemplation was not meant to remain abstract, but to inspire concrete service. By fixing their gaze on Christ's sacrifice, the sisters learned to love generously, offering themselves in humble and faithful service to others. The mission of the congregation unfolded in clear and practical ways. The sisters devoted themselves to educating children, especially the poor, who had no access to learning. They taught the faith through catechism, guiding souls toward God with patience and care. At the same time, they served the sick and the abandoned, responding to both spiritual and physical needs with compassion rooted in the gospel. As word of their work spread, new foundations were requested in other cities. Communities were established in Venice, Milan, Bergamo, and Trent, each one adapting to local needs while remaining faithful to the same spirit. What began in a single place now extended across regions, bringing hope where it was most needed. The growth of the congregation reflected the power of a mission grounded in love. Magdalene carefully shaped a way of life that held together prayer and action. She understood that service without prayer could lose its meaning, while prayer without service could become incomplete. Her vision brought these two dimensions into harmony. The sisters were called to remain rooted in God while actively engaging the world, creating a balance that became a defining characteristic of their vocation. Her heart also turned toward the spiritual needs of boys and young men. Magdalene desired that they, too, might receive education and guidance shaped by the same love she offered to girls. Though the development of a male branch would unfold gradually, her vision extended beyond immediate results. She saw the mission as something larger, entrusted to God's time and providence. Over time, the Canossian charism became a distinct and recognized gift within the church. It was marked by simplicity, humility, and a deep commitment to serving the poorest. More than an institution, it was a spiritual path rooted in the love of Christ crucified. Through Magdalene's fidelity, this charism would continue to grow, leaving a lasting imprint on the life and mission of the church. Chapter 6. Trials, Relationships, and Perseverance. As the congregation continued to grow, Magdalene understood that her work needed official recognition from the church. This was not a matter of honor or status, but of fidelity and stability. She desired that the mission entrusted to her would endure beyond her lifetime, firmly rooted in ecclesial authority. With humility and trust, she began the long journey of seeking approval, knowing that God often works patiently through time. In 1815, filled with hope, she traveled to meet Pope Pius VII, believing that this encounter might open the door for her congregation. She carried within her heart the fruits of years of prayer and sacrifice. Yet the meeting did not unfold as she had hoped. The response was formal and distant, offering no clear encouragement. For Magdalene, this moment became a quiet but profound disappointment. This experience tested her deeply. She felt the weight of uncertainty, wondering if she had misunderstood God's will. The lack of affirmation was painful, especially after such sincere effort. Yet she did not allow discouragement to take root. Instead, she brought her disappointment into prayer, learning to trust even when clarity was absent. In this hidden struggle, her faith was purified and strengthened in ways she could not yet see. Rather than abandoning her mission, Magdalene returned to her work with renewed humility. She carefully revised the rule of the congregation, seeking greater clarity and alignment with the church's expectations. She submitted documents, waited, and tried again, accepting the slow and often uncertain process. This perseverance revealed a heart that no longer sought immediate results, but remained faithful to God's timing and guidance. Her journey was not lived in isolation. Magdalene formed relationships with others who shared her desire to serve God, though these were not always without difficulty. Her collaboration with Leopoldina Naudet began with mutual respect, but eventually revealed differences in vision. These tensions, though painful, taught her discernment. She learned to remain faithful to her mission while allowing others the freedom to follow their own path. At the same time, she found support in meaningful spiritual friendships. Among these was her relationship with Antonio Rosmini, whose insight and encouragement helped strengthen her discernment. Through such connections, Magdalene experienced how God provides companions along the way. These relationships became a source of wisdom and consolation, reminding her that even in struggle, she was not alone in her journey. After years of waiting, refining, and trusting, the moment of grace finally arrived. In 1828, Pope Leo XII granted official approval to the congregation. What had once seemed uncertain was now confirmed by the Church. This recognition was not simply an external validation, but a sign of God's faithfulness. Magdalene received it with gratitude, knowing that every trial had been part of a greater plan unfolding in love. Chapter 7. A Holy Death and a Lasting Spiritual Legacy. In the final years of her life, Magdalene's body gradually weakened, yet her soul grew stronger in grace. Illness did not take away her peace, but seemed to deepen her union with God. She continued to guide her community with quiet strength, offering wisdom shaped by years of fidelity. Her suffering was not meaningless, but embraced as a participation in the cross she had long contemplated. As her health declined, Magdalene became increasingly aware that her earthly journey was coming to an end. This awareness did not bring fear, but a calm readiness. She prepared her soul through prayer, surrender, and trust in God's mercy. Her life had been a continual offering, and now she entrusted its completion to the Lord. In this peaceful acceptance, her faith shone with quiet and profound beauty. On the 10th of April, 1835, in her beloved city of Verona, Magdalene passed from this life into eternal rest. Her death was marked not by turmoil, but by serenity. Surrounded by the spirit of prayer she had cultivated throughout her life, she returned to God with trust. For those who knew her, it was not an end, but a fulfillment, a life poured out in love, now received in divine embrace. After her death, the work she began did not fade, but continued to grow. The Canossian sisters carried forward her mission with fidelity and courage. New communities were established beyond Italy, reaching different cultures and continents. What had begun as a small act of charity became a living movement within the Church. Her vision, rooted in love, continued to bear fruit in places she had never seen. The charism she entrusted to her daughters remained clear and enduring. It was a call to serve Christ in the poor, to educate, to evangelize, and to care for those most in need. This mission extended through schools, missions, and charitable works. Wherever the Canossian spirit was lived, the love of Christ crucified was made visible. Her legacy became not only a memory, but a living witness. The Church, recognizing the holiness of her life, raised her to the honor of the altars. In 1941, Pope Pius XII beatified Magdalene, affirming the example of her virtue and faith. This recognition invited the faithful to look to her as a model of trust and charity. Her life, once hidden in service, now became a light for the wider Church to contemplate and follow. Years later, in 1988, Pope John Paul II canonized her as a saint of the Church. This solemn declaration confirmed what many had already believed, that her life reflected the love of Christ in a remarkable way. Today, Saint Magdalene of Canossa stands as a witness to active charity rooted in contemplation, inviting all believers to live a faith that is both prayerful and profoundly alive in love. Chapter 8. A Prayer to Saint Magdalene of Canossa. O Saint Magdalene of Canossa, you who gave your whole life to God and to the poor, we come before you with humble and trusting hearts today. You chose love over comfort and service over honor. Teach us to follow your example, so that our lives may also become a gift offered entirely to God through sincere and faithful charity. Help us, dear Saint, to recognize the voice of God amid the noise and confusion of our daily lives. When we are uncertain, distracted, or overwhelmed, guide our hearts back to His presence. Teach us to listen not only with our ears, but with faith, so that we may discern His will and respond with trust and quiet obedience. Teach us to have the courage to let go of our own plans when they do not lead us closer to God. Like you, may we not cling to what is safe or comfortable, but choose what is true and good. Strengthen us to surrender our will with confidence, believing that God's plan, even when hidden, is always filled with love and purpose. Help us to live our faith not only in words, but in concrete acts of love. Open our eyes to the needs of those around us and move our hearts to respond generously. May we learn, as you did, that every small act of kindness reflects God's presence, and that true holiness is found in serving others with humility and compassion. Intercede for all those who are poor, abandoned, or suffering in any way. Pray for children without guidance, for the sick without care, and for those who feel forgotten by the world. Through your prayers, may they experience God's tenderness and hope. Help us to become instruments of that same love in the lives of those who are most in need. Sustain us, Saint Magdalene, in moments of trial and failure. When we feel discouraged or weak, remind us that God is still at work within us. Teach us to persevere with patience and trust, even when we do not see immediate results. Help us to believe that every effort offered in love has meaning in God's eyes. Lead us, finally, to the perfect love revealed in Jesus Christ crucified. May we learn to embrace sacrifice, to forgive, and to give ourselves without holding back. Through your intercession, guide us closer to the heart of Christ, where true peace is found. May our lives become a reflection of His love, now and forever. Amen.